You know what I've been doing a lot recently? Playing Monster Hunter. A few months ago, I went on a binge that started with playing through all of the village quests in 3U, and then the final chunk of G rank in Gen Ult with a group of friends that we've been putting off. And then, right after both of those, I bought and completed all of Wilds. If you asked any of my friends, they would tell you that I was crazy, not because of how much I like Monster Hunter, but because of how much I play these games, despite the fact that I kind of hate them. Whenever I play through one of these games in multiplayer, I'm known to complain about basically everything. But if I can defend myself for a bit, I do it because the game is lying. It's lying to you, it's lying to me, it's lying to itself. And I promise I'll explain what I mean by that. But first, if you're a Monster Hunter fan, I want to ask you a question. And make sure you think about it. Really. This is important. Are you sure that you like Monster Hunter? See, Monster Hunter is a really weird series of games, and every time I play one, I feel like I'm going crazy because there's a bunch of stuff that seems incredibly obvious to me, and every time I explain it, no one has ever thought about it. I said it was lying earlier, but that's not technically true. See, what I'm talking about is that a lot of the time, Monster Hunter feels like it's trying to be two different kinds of game at the same time. And every time I play one, I can feel those two playing tug of war. The first of these two games is the realistic hunting simulator, where you need to track a realistic creature through a realistic ecology full of realistic grass textures. This is where you get mechanics like needing to eat to keep your stamina up, paintballing monsters to keep track of them, or crafting potions with weeds and mushrooms you found on the ground like a child making a mud pie. The other game is a grindy-ass boss rush, where each monster isn't a realistic depiction of wildlife, but is instead a boss fight to be learned and mastered so that you can grind thousands of them into a pile of scales and webbing as fast as possible in the effort to make a cool hat out of them. This is the game that allows you to infinitely retry missions, limits the amount you can die in a hunt, and induces a time limit so you don't get too complacent. And actually, let's start by talking about that time limit, because it's one of the biggest things causing this conflict. I'm serious, why is there a timer? The most common answer I see Monster Hunter fans give is that, well, if there wasn't a timer, you could use camping tactics to cheese every fight. But, like, isn't that kind of the point? There's a whole foraging and crafting mechanic to refill on potions and supplies that feels like it's purpose-built for that playstyle. Plus, the timer is usually 50 entire real-life Earth minutes. If I want to spend an hour slowly whittling down a dragon that I'm way too weak to fight head-on, like the endurance hunter my ancestors were, I should be allowed to do that, right? You are already limited to taking on quests that are reasonable for you to finish, and being able to finish a fight quicker already has the intrinsic reward of the fight is finished quicker, so why is there a timer? As far as I can tell, all it does is just devalue a lot of the survival simulator aspects of the game. If I'm having a hard time in an urgent quest and I run out of potions, what am I supposed to do? Go refill on herbs and mushrooms for 10 minutes? I'm on the damn clock! But wait, I hear you say. No hunt should take 50 minutes, it should never be a problem that you deal with, and you kinda got me there. Admittedly, the number of times that I've had to worry about the timer when playing the game normally can be counted on one hand. But, if that's the case, then we still haven't answered the question of why it's there. If it's not something that you should worry about, then there shouldn't be a problem with removing it, right? And yet, I will occasionally see forums of usually new players asking how to turn it off, or simply complaining about the timer existing, and a lot of series veterans seem really upset by the idea of getting rid of it. So it must be doing something, right? Here's my hypothesis. The timer is there because Monster Hunter wants to emphasize preparation and efficiency. The implication being that if you're not prepared enough, if you're not being efficient enough, you don't deserve to clear the hunt because you haven't engaged with the systems available to you to create a build and collect all the items you'll need before the hunt began. Okay, so with that reading, it seems like Monster Hunter wants you to explore the environment first, then take on a quest to prove your mastery over it. But then why do you have to track? It's weird that tracking was only added in World, right? Like, that feels like something DOS would have added, but they just never got to. Like, okay, you have the paintball mechanic, and some monsters would change the map slightly for their quest, but we didn't get footprints and claw marks until World. And part of that may be due to technical reasons, but I think there's also a design decision behind it as well. The thing is, needing to track a monster, or at least find out where they are, is the complete opposite design philosophy from giving the games a timer. If you're putting me on the clock, why are you also asking me to spend a bunch of time just finding the thing I gotta kill, and not only finding it, but finding it when I am beholden to the random movement of the monster? The amount of times I went to hunt Azure Rathalos in 3U only to get up to the nest and find it had just left, so then I gotta run around the entire map looking for it for like 10 minutes, because every time I get to one of its locations, it had just left or was about to arrive, so I keep rechecking the same areas over and over and over and over and over. The point is, that gets exponentially more stressful and frustrating when you know you're being timed. That's why World has scout flies, and why Wilds gives you a bird that just automatically tracks the monster for you. It's an attempt to capitulate to the timer and takes a mechanic that should be immersing you in a living world, and instead turns it into window dressing. And that's a real shame, because those kinds of immersive simulator-esque mechanics are pretty much exclusively what I see Monster Hunter fans praising about the series. If the two sides of the game are playing tug-of-war, then the proverbial flag in the middle of the rope is the series boss design. And why wouldn't it be? Basically, the only thing you do in the game is hunt monsters. It's literally the title. But for a creature you're supposed to spend hours upon hours killing repeatedly, the monsters in Monster Hunter are not designed to be fought. Or, put another way, the main guiding philosophy of the Monster Hunter boss design seems to be that this is a creature, this is the things it can do, you figure out how to beat it. Fighting monsters in Monster Hunter feels so different to every other action RPG, because in what other game does a boss fight look like? Oh my god, get down here. And that's playing the game well. Let's take a comparison from one of the best 3D action games of the last 10 years, made by the kings of the genre, From Software. You know it, you love it, you've probably played it, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. In Sekiro, the boss fights are designed like a dance partner. For each attack they have, you have a response, and after each action there's a cooldown where it's your turn to apply pressure. Monster Hunter does not do this. The monsters are going to pressure you whether you like it or not, and if you want to get a hit in, most of the time you have to have someone else drawing aggro, or just get lucky. This leads to a lot of time in Monster Hunter where you're not actually fighting the monster, you're just waiting for it to be in a position where you can do some damage, which wouldn't be so bad except for that damn clock. Going back to Sekiro for a bit, because each boss is meant to be beaten just the once, there is a distinct learning curve to it. Each boss can teach you a certain skill. The Armored Warrior makes sure you know how to parry. Owl teaches you to read and react to a boss's moves on the fly, not just rely on rote memorization. These skills all build on each other, allowing you to take on harder and harder bosses until you've proven mastery over everything the game can throw at you. Monster Hunter, again, does not do this. This is despite the fact that monsters are usually meant to be hunted in a general order. For example, Great Jaggy goes before Rathalos, which goes before whatever Elder Dragon is making the monsters go berserk in this game. Even with that order, the skills you learn against one monster rarely transfer to the next, leading to a fairly flat skill curve. Most weapons are pretty simple. They just want to fill up their bar or resource, and then do a big charge move or combo. There's not really much more to learn than that. The only hitch is waiting until you have time to actually get your whole combo off. As a result, a lot of fights can feel incredibly frustrating when you can't get a hit in or the monster keeps jumping out of the way of your combos, and even more so with how willing the game is to put you in truly unwinnable situations. I have killed a lot of monsters in this series, but I would be hard-pressed to name one that I actually found to be a compelling challenge that felt satisfying to master. And that's because these creatures aren't designed as boss fights, they're designed to be real creatures, albeit magic ones. Of course, they're not going to stand there while you charge up a giant cannon shot. They're going to move out of the way or hit you while you're charging because they're a living, breathing, thinking creature. But that illusion can only run so deep. I can kill as many Archvelds as I want, a species that supposedly only had one living individual until about 5 minutes ago, and they will keep showing up. The need to grind parts ends up devaluing these monsters as living beings. Each monster has to be both an individual example of a wider species and the only example of that species. Why does every Nargacuga have the same eye scar? How many Diablos have lost their horns to hunters and become bloodbaths? How is it possible that every monster in Wilds is a guild-approved target? These are questions that Monster Hunter does not want you to ask, because if you do, you start to see the cracks. The story is telling us that these are unique beings, but the gameplay demands that they be infinite in number, and each one be the same as the next. If you spend enough time listening to Monster Hunter fans, you're gonna hear the word ecology probably about once every, 3 sentences. It comes up a lot. And a lot of people are gonna tell you that the ecology is the most important aspect of the series. That without a living, immersive ecology, the series would have no identity. Those same fans will also tell you the newer games are losing the series' identity, sort of implying that the ecology is less important in the newer games. But if you look at it, the ecology is more alive and interconnected than ever in Wilds. Stuff like this is why I think people feel that way, though. You can have as many small monsters or endemic life as you want, or show life cycles of areas and how it affects different wildlife, and how they all interact with each other in this massive, connected, ecological web. But none of that matters if the player never has to interact with it, or worse, is actively disincentivized from doing so. Wilds is such a weird entry in the series because in some ways it's the most alive a Monster Hunter game has ever been, but in the interest of lessening the friction between the gameplay and story, they put the entire thing behind glass. Even though the only village is a mess of tents, and it's situated directly inside the open world, it feels more like a zoo exhibit, or one of those Disney Animal Kingdom rides, I assume. This is, I think, what people mean when they say it feels like Monster Hunter is losing its identity. The thing is, it's not losing anything. It's playing into mechanics that have always been present in the series. What is happening is that the story is trying really hard to convince you that the game is one thing, but the gameplay is trending in the opposite direction. So, where do we go from here? Monster Hunter as a series is experiencing a decades-long identity crisis that only gets more and more pronounced with each entry. The question you're probably asking yourself right now is, can we fix it, and if so, how? Well, I have 2 ideas, but you're probably not gonna like them. The first is, without a doubt, the most controversial feature request in all of Monster Hunter. Something that a lot of new players seem to really want, and a lot of old players really hate. But if you'll hear me out, I think we can have an honest discussion about the topic of this section of the video, which is something that I'm not scared to talk about. Yeah, okay, it's about monster health bars. The problem with this conversation is that both sides don't really know what they mean when they talk about a health bar. Whenever I have this conversation, people tell me, well, Monster Hunter already has a health system, just look at part breaks and exhaustion. And those are not the same, but it literally indicates how much damage you've done. This is why nobody can have this discussion. First, we need to talk about what a health bar actually is. Well, it's a bar that shows your health, Wido. What are you, stupid? Okay. But, in abstract, what is a health bar? What is it doing? Why is it a bar? If you just needed to know your health value, you could just put a number up, or have the sides of the screen go red like a shooter, and that would be enough. But it's not. See, what a health bar is a visual representation of progress. For example, when you're playing Dark Souls and you see Gaping Dragon is at half health, you can look at your resources that you've expended and see if the rest of the fight is going to be winnable. Or, if you're fighting Gaping Dragon, you can see that you're about to win the fight, and it gives you a real sense of urgency and tension, knowing that you just need to land that one last hit. Health bars are also a measure of your strength versus any particular enemy. If you enter a new boss arena and see that your sword does a single pixel of damage, you can pretty quickly gauge that this fight probably isn't meant to be done at your current level. Conversely, if you hit a boss once and half of its health bar goes away, you know you're probably way overleveled. So, why does exhaustion, part breaks, and limping not count? Well, exhaustion is a separate value from health in the code entirely, and you can't even see it if the monster is enraged, and depending on what you're fighting, that might be literally all the time. Part breaks don't actually tell you anything about the overall health of the monster, just that you've hit a specific part a lot. Some weapons mainly try to go for certain parts like the head or tail, and so might only get that one break fairly early on in the fight. Pop quiz. How hurt do you think this Rathalos is? Most of his parts have been broken, so is he almost dead, or am I just using Brachidio's weapons? He wasn't almost dead, by the way. It took like 15 more minutes to get him to even start limping. Speaking of, what about limping? That's one of the clearest indications that a fight is close to over, but you can only see it when a monster isn't enraged again and isn't fighting you. And it only tells you it has less than about 20% of its health left. There's no way to know how long ago it crossed that threshold, or any indication of your progress up until that point. And that's not even considering how most of the time limping is basically just a kill condition, because trapping is nearly always better. I want to be crystal clear here. I understand that giving monsters health bars would make the game lose something. Essentially, it would represent a total victory of the boss rush stat grinding game, and the death of the realistic simulator that fans love to pretend Monster Hunter is. But I also think it would undoubtedly make the game better, and specifically much less frustrating to play. And the reason that I know that is because I play these games with health bars, and I get less frustrated. For me, not having a health bar makes it feel like I am not making progress. I'm just hitting the monster over and over and over again, and eventually it will fall over. If I have a health bar, every time I hit it, I can see that little bit of progress being made, and it stops me from losing my mind when I inevitably miss an attack or don't get my combo off. But I also recognize that literally just having a health bar is a little bit too far for this series. So, what if we could have health bars without having health bars? Here's what I mean. One of the biggest problems with most of the health indicator mechanics in Monster Hunter is that they don't work when the monster is enraged, which is, again, a lot of the time. So, what if we turn rage into a health indicator? Instead of putting it on a random timer, what if monsters enraged when they took a certain amount of damage? Like, after 10% of its health is missing, and then again at 40%, and then again at 60%. You can even vary the rage timings to make each monster feel unique, like maybe Zinogre only enrages for the first time after 25% of its health is gone, because it takes a long time to charge up. But Tigrex does it at 5%. This still allows you to learn a monster and get information from its behavior while visually showing you that you are making progress in the fight. If a monster comes out of rage and immediately rages again, you know you did enough damage to get past 2 of its checks. Or, if you start fighting a monster and it doesn't enrage within a good few minutes, you know it's probably not worth it to continue and you're going to need better gear. Maybe that's not satisfying. It feels too video gamey. I said there were 2 options, so what's the second one? Well, get rid of the timer, get rid of the fainting limit maybe, probably get rid of quests entirely. Wilds actually already has a really cool randomized hunt system where you can't just hunt any monster you want on demand, you have to wait for it to show up naturally in the environment, which can depend on any number of factors. What cycle the map is in, the time of day, what prey is available, etc. This is super cool for a hunting simulator, and if we combine that with a more beefed up tracking system that you actually had to use, no map icons, no scout flies, And I cannot stress enough, get rid of the timer. Fuck it, get rid of base camp. Make it a survival game. You are in the jungle with a tent and a palico, and you have to figure out how to make a weapon. You'd have to lower material costs, or maybe replace some monster part requirements with common items like ores and harvest materials, and you'd probably lose something in the way of not having any NPCs, but I genuinely think this could be a cool direction to go for a Monster Hunter game, at least for a spin-off. And you might not even need to get rid of material grinding. If Wilds had a good story, that's a different video. Stay on target, stay on target. The main goal of both of these hypothetical system changes is to make a Monster Hunter that feels like one cohesive game, instead of a weird hybrid of two different genres eating each other forever, like an Ouroboros, or I guess a Devil Joe.
He will eat his own tail.
Wow.
Either the story needs to adapt to justify the boss fight grinding, or the gameplay needs to get more serious about being a hunting game. I want to return to the question I asked at the beginning of the video. Do you like Monster Hunter? Or do you like what you are convinced Monster Hunter is? Because for me, at least, I can't say I ever fully enjoyed any of these games. But I keep coming back to them, so clearly there's something in there. And I think it's because I think I could really get into either kind of game. If they lent more into stat grinding boss fight game, that's something that I would really enjoy. And similarly, I think a real survival hunting simulator would be pretty cool. But as the series is, it isn't that. I think what keeps me coming back to it is that I can very easily imagine a version of this game that I really, really love. In fact, it exists. It's called Dragon's Dogma 2.